Welcome to Getting Personal, a monthly podcast diving deep into the stories of the heartbeat of HR. Brought to you by Compt, a global lifestyle benefits platform where companies empower employees with benefits and rewards they'll use and appreciate, whoever and wherever they are in life.
Today, I am joined by Yvonne Stegic. Yvonne is the CEO of TEN7, a values-driven digital agency whose mission is to make things that matter, which resonates with me. With over 100 years of design and development experience, TEN7 delivers consistently great service to clients with complex websites. Yvonne lives in Minneapolis with his wife, kids, and two long-haired dachshunds, is a huge Minnesota Twins fan. As a Phillies fan, I have a lot to say and a relentless ambassador for technology, science, and common sense, and an eternal optimist.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
love that intro, Yvonne. Tell me more about
Oh,
you before we dive into the background.
oh, sure. Thank you for having me on this,
Of
first of
course.
all. Eternal optimist is definitely a description of who I am. Um, I I don't know. I mean, that's intro kind of summarized all of it. What more do you want to know? I'm happy to tell you about. Well, how about where I grew up? I grew up in South Africa. I was born an immigrant son to immigrants, and lived through uh, honestly the worst parts of apartheid in
Mhm.
the late 70s, early 80s, and then the best parts of seeing the back end of apartheid when Nelson Mandela was released in 1990. I was in high school when the first free and fair elections happened. I was I was the last year of high school, so I wasn't able to vote. I wasn't old enough, but
Mm.
I was on my way into college, and I saw that giant transition happen, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, all of that. And so, like, the story for me really begins in Africa with this idea of what the American dream is. And then I made it over to the United States in 1999 based on, you know, a whole lot of luck and a whole lot of hard work, as they say.
So just in time for the Y2K chaos.
There you go. And the dot-com boom and bust and all of that stuff.
Yeah. So I imagine that those experiences were significant for you. They really shaped who you are, your beliefs that are both personal and workplace focused. So I want to learn more about how those things shaped your views, especially when it relates to inclusivity, team building, because I know you have a very special culture at 107.
We do. I think we do. And if other people recognize it, then maybe there's some truth to it. Um, yeah. So imagine being a young 8-year-old white boy in an all boys school with a uniform, with a very regimented education and upbringing, a prep school that's government and public, and having absolutely only little white boys to deal with.
Hmm.
Teachers being mostly women, mostly white, actually all white women, and not being exposed to any kind of diversity. Um, all I knew were my parents, two white folk, and white boys at school. And on TV, you would see Michael Knight and Knight Rider, and you would see Airwolf and the A Team, and then you would have a nanny that was Black South African, and all your friends had nannies. And all of their they were called maids and nannies, and they were the only diversity you would see.
Hmm.
You would think that you grow up accepting that and having that be part of who you are. Like, yes, we're white, we're the best, and those people that are serving us are not people. And granted, there are people that grew up like that. Um, Elon Musk is about my age, and he grew up in South Africa, and he had the same upbringing. And I think that my perspective is very different than his. I went the other way. I was like, why is this happening? Why are there people who are not involved at school? Like, I was questioning this at a very young age, and I very quickly realized that this just felt wrong, and it was wrong. And as I grew up, it just became really gross. And unfair and unjust. And so seeing what happened as a result of apartheid and the changes that happened made it really um, it made me much happier than I otherwise would have been. And so all of that experience basically funneled into the the way that I behave now, where my honest perspective is we're all human. We're all have we all make mistakes. We call those experiences. We all are just trying to be better. It doesn't matter who I am or where I am on the planet. This is the general consensus and the general drive that we all have as humans. Why can't we just get along? And so that sort of racist apartheid upbringing and ecosystem and context really made me go the opposite way. And so that's why I've always been interested in people for the sake of being people and trying to foster a business that does that and works with people because they are people and not for any other reason. So I think that's sort of the origin story of where the kind of culture that we have at 10-7 really came from.
Think that's particularly interesting as we look at the general trend in the makeup of so many different tech companies and startups and just general entrepreneurships. What I found fascinating when I was looking at your background was the combination of physics and psychology. Psychology makes a lot of sense from what you were just saying. Physics, it seems like maybe a departure, but then you became a Honeywell futurist. I need to understand more about that. I need the context so that I can understand more about your focus on building a human-centered team.
Yeah, that's so I have very much of a left brain, right brain
Mhm.
composition. So my parents were both naval architects, and so they, in Croatia, where they came from, they were educated in the art of building ships, and they ended up being in Africa, not building ships, but building electrical circuits. In my mom's case, conveyors and bulk material handling. In my dad's case, they both ended up as engineers. Um, I grew up with an affinity for math and physics, and I think had a high EQ very early on in life. And when I got to high school and when I signed up for college, I really wanted to be a doctor, and I
Mm.
just couldn't make it into medical school. And so when I was rejected from medical school, I went into psychology. And I thought to myself, that's really where I want to be. I want to be in the field of helping people. And when I was signing up for those classes, I had to fill in a couple of extra blocks. And physics sounded really great because I'd really loved it in high school. So I signed up for physics. And that required math. So I signed up for math too. And so I ended up having a double major in physics and in psychology. And I really loved the sort of cut and dry aspects of physics. They're formulas, you put inputs in, you get outputs out. I can do the work, you can do the work, it can be repeated 1,000 times. We'll always have that line. There'll always be the
Right.
same inputs and the same outputs. Psychology was mushy and soft edges and did you mean this? Did you mean that? Like the theories are there, but they can be applied in different ways. And that was also attractive to me. And so since I had this kind of interest in both, I just double majored in both. And as a result of the physics work, I got really interested in the data parts and the computery parts of physics. And so I decided to continue my physics work, hoping that I would be able to bring in my psychology work at some point. And that's kind of what happened. I ended up at Honeywell and then at Emation and then at a startup. And at the startup, I saw exactly what it was like not to like how not to build a team, how not to function in a team, bro culture, all of that stuff. And I used that again as the anti to build 10-7 because I knew what I didn't want. I wanted 10-7 to be the opposite. And so that's how like the whole physics psychology journey brought me to starting a company that's tech based, creative based, but really focused on the people and the work.
I imagine that you saw very different cultures in a company like Honeywell from being as massive as it is, and
Yeah.
the different structures, the org structure is so vastly different than your bro culture startup.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm wondering, were there certain pieces that you took from each of those experiences, that even maybe now you think about daily, like, well, I want to make sure that I do this because I really liked the way this one manager handled this situation, or I really want to make sure I steer away from that because I saw that it did not work out.
Yeah. So, as with life, you remember the good things more than the bad things. And then you remember the really bad things as well so that you
Right.
don't repeat those. At least that's how it's been for me. So, when I started at Honeywell, it was the late 90s, the early aughts, and I had a PhD mentor who was my boss. His name's Earl Benzer. And Earl was a very kind, very smart, very high EQ man. He picked me up at the airport on my very first day in America. He dropped me off at the rental car place and said, "Here's a key, figure it out." It was Super Bowl weekend in 1999.
Oh no.
It's snow everywhere in Minneapolis. I had to figure out how to do it. And I appreciated that because he gave me trust and he basically didn't baby me. He didn't, oh, like, you're 22 years old, you're from a different country, let me show you how to do this. No, he knew I was capable, even though maybe I didn't believe it at the time. He knew I would be able to do it and he just set me out. And so that really, that stuck with me because uh, it's really hard when you start a business on your own and you have the desire to do everything and have everything be perfect, to let go of things so that other people can do the things probably better than you can because they're
Mhm.
probably more expert and have focus on that one thing you're giving them. And so taking that from Earl and trusting the people that I have on my team to do the things, that's what I brought. That's what I think the very first influence from a manager I ever had. And then as the companies got smaller, because Emation was smaller than Honeywell, like different things become inspiring. Leaders at Emation, particularly one man, Chad, who was able to corral a team around an idea, this new optical media we were making that was 32 millimeters in size, double sided, in a cassette, like high density. No one's ever done this before. We haven't done this before. Nobody knows how to do what we're doing. Let's figure it out. Like, he had an amazing way to inspire people. I still talk to him to this day. He was able to bring us together to know where we were going and to push us there. So that's what I remember. And then I remember that toxic uh, bro culture, awful environment where I was just trying to do the right thing. I was just trying to make this part of my responsibility high quality, cool, useful. And I had other guys that were basically bullying me, laughing
Mhm.
at me, you know, not the kind of thing you want in any environment, let alone at a work environment. Guys that were down in the basement smoking, inviting me down to basically give me their thoughts on how the world was. Did that once, totally not ever again. Um, Not to say that there's anything wrong with smoking, but it was just one of those, smoke-filled basements of a corporate building where like nobody really hangs out except the guys that have something to prove to themselves. And like that's not what I wanted. I wanted openness and trust and transparency because in my opinion, our whole is always more than the sum of its parts. And if we're working together as a team, we're going to come up with solutions that we could never come up with when we're not working on a team. And that's what I wanted. So like two very positive influences and then a kind of a negative influence. And then like I guess that's how it all came together. And I'm pretty sure I answered your question.
You did. I have so many thoughts here because I think it's really interesting that you have the academic research in psychology behind you, and then you were able to live those experiences and
Yeah.
see, yeah, what I've read in the textbooks actually does or doesn't work. So it really did lead you down a certain path. And the other thing that you had
Mhm.
mentioned in trusting the people that you hire, because hello,
Hello.
um, I experienced that for the first time here at Compt,
Oh,
where our CEO Amy brought me on and she said, "Well, what do I know about PR and marketing? I hired you. Like, you know, so you tell me what to do. You're, in this sense, you are my boss," which
perfect.
she says to me a lot of
Perfect.
times.
Yes.
And I couldn't believe it. It was the first time I had ever experienced that. And I also have this fear in the back of my mind that it'll be the only time that I experience this, because this is my first foray into startups. And I know from so many other people and so many stories that have been shared that what you've experienced, what I'm experiencing, or what you're building at 10-7 is not necessarily always the case. And that is a bummer.
It is a bummer. But remember, we can only control ourselves, and we
Yeah.
can only control the things that are around us and influence the people that we work with. And if we continue to believe that, and if we continue to do the good work, we can make those changes for ourselves and the people around us. And hopefully, fingers crossed, when those people experience that and leave, because everybody has a start date and an end date, right?
Mhm.
When they leave, they can bring that influence and that optimism and the way that they've been treated to the new place. And that's how we can spread this work that we're doing. Because it's going to happen, it's just going to take time. And it is a bummer that it's not like that everywhere. But we can do it, right? We can continue to spread the word and do this kind of work.
Well, you are definitely doing it because I know your company values include be honest, be inclusive, be open, be mindful, be a team.
Yes.
That all feels very familiar. Was there a specific moment that helped you crystallize these values when you were sitting down preparing to
Yeah.
build this company? Tell me about that.
I started the company by mistake. I did.
Yeah.
That's the honest truth. I spent 2 years at that startup. I burned out. I was
Mhm.
spending 50 to 60 hours working a week, every week. My kids were 1 and 2, never saw them. And I literally came home one day and I'm like, "Honey, I'm done. I can't go back. I just can't do it." And she was like, "Well, don't burn any bridges. Do a classy exit. You don't need to just quit. Do the right thing." And she was right. So I gave my notice and I like they were shocked I was leaving, which
It's
means
always that way.
it
They're
means they weren't
always
in
shocked.
tune. They weren't in tune with what was going on. Like if you're
Mhm.
shocked, you're not paying attention, right? And so I left and I honestly didn't know what to do. Like we didn't have it was 2007. It was prior to the, 2008 crash. It was still, different kind of, Bush was in power. There was still the Iraq war, but there was, you know, we took a risk.
Yeah.
And I ended up partnering with a graphic designer and volunteering on a web committee and building a website in Joomla. And I was like, this is kind of cool. And then the graphic designer asked me, "Hey, do you have more time? I have this other client." I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And that's how I started 10-7. Um, and I spent a lot of time by myself in my basement until I got the courage to hire someone to help me and to let go of the work that I was doing. Just like I said earlier, that was really hard. And honestly, it didn't, it, I think this is the fifth or the sixth version 5 or version 6 of 10.7. Um, we came up with the values and the mission we have now about 4 years ago. It took
Interesting.
it took about 10 years to come up with some sort of value system, some sort of mantra that kind of was okay, but wasn't really descriptive. And then I really spent time thinking about our values and our mission when when I had the conversation with my business coach about the new brand and the new look of our website that we were going to have. And when we started talking about what should that website really say, and when Jeff and I were talking about that, I realized that the mission and the values we had really weren't representative of what I wanted the company to be. And that's where we spent hours doing a brainstorming session. And it fundamentally started to reflect my own values and my own mission and my own positioning. And so the values came out of who I am and who I was. And the mission came out of the people that are around me and the work that we were doing and what we wanted to do. Um, and I was the bearer of that mission and those values for a long time. And in the last year or so, my leadership team has begun to infuse their own um, take and
Hmm.
ownership of the mission and the vision. And and that's exactly what I want. Like it does me no good to keep saying what our mission is and trying to live our values if no one else is living them, if no one else is saying them and making it them their own. And so I would say it was definitely a journey. It took longer than I thought it would. I never consciously set out to do that, but when I realized we needed it, I went all in. And I can't imagine a successful company out there anymore without a vision and a leadership that has sort of a north star towards where they're going.
Is this around the same time that you also decided to go open source with your benefits and how you do things? Because I also thought that was really interesting. It feels like those moments would be aligned.
Yes, they were aligned. They were aligned. Right around the same time we were redoing our website, and I was thinking about our mission and values. About 3 to 6 months before that, we needed to hire some team members because we had more work than we could handle. And in the process of hiring those team members, I realized we didn't have an employee handbook, and
Mm.
everything I looked at online was like corporate and
Yeah.
and like ADP wrote it, or this fleet of attorneys at ADP wrote something and put it in a really bad interface, and all you had to do was press print. Like that's not who we are. Like no. And so so we came up with our own handbook. It's like reading a story. It has chapters. It's from beginning to end. It's something that a new employee sits down and reads on the first day. If they've not seen it before, I would be surprised because the handbook is open source. It's also a website, so we use it as a magnet. We use it and we point to it in any job posts that we have, so that potential employees see it and can read it and can know what it's like to be a part of our team. And if that's something for them, then they already have read this employee handbook before they sat down and got hired on the first day. But that's in theory what they should be doing on the first day. And the reason it's open source is I think it's pretty good. Like, I would love for other people to benefit from it. And we already did the hard work to write it.
Right.
Um, why not have it be open source? Why not have others copy it? I don't care. Like, make it your own. Do the thing. Um, we actually had to make a change to it in January. We changed our parental leave policy
Hmm.
from being 4 weeks and only for in the event of a parental in the event of having a baby, only for your parents. Now we call it a significant life event policy, and it's still 4 weeks, but it now covers parental leave, but it also covers what happens if your mom gets sick, or you get sick, or there's someone you need to look after, or there's some other significant life event that maybe PTO won't cover, disability won't cover, like there isn't something else that will cover it. So when we rewrote that, since it since it had been 2 or 3 years since we published the handbook, we were like, oh, we should probably have legal check this. So we sent it to our attorney, and he started reading it, and he actually started making changes to the handbook from the very beginning this is not handbook stuff. This is not. And then he stopped. He told us, he
Mhm.
stopped. He was like, oh, wait a sec. This handbook is supposed to be like this.
Mhm.
And I'm going to read it and verify it and make sure it's legally sound. I'm not going to make the changes to it so that it becomes something more corporate. This is 10-7's style. This is their culture. I'm not going to destroy it. And I was so thankful for Dan to do that because his job is to look after us and to do the legal things necessary so we're protected. So now I can say the handbook's been vetted and wasn't changed and is still legally sound. And that made me feel really happy about it. So please, if you need a handbook or need a review, please look at it. It's at handbook.ten7.com, and there's a link in the footer to the GitHub repository where the source code for the website is. Feel free to fork that repo, make it your own. You could literally make your own website that looks like ours and change the logo and change the colors, and like that would be just fine.
That's very cool. You've done all the heavy lifting.
There you go. Yes. You probably will need to change the links to the correct health insurance policies and
Sure.
dental policies, but like other than that, like you could probably use it the way it is.
I think building a company that is values focused, where everyone knows those values, lives those values, and then know their benefits and are able to take advantage of those benefits because they know them. Everything is visible and transparent. And I know that you've talked about the importance of myths, shared beliefs, and building strong teams. And I know that you recently did a keynote on it. So I want to know, this is such a loaded question because I know you've learned so much, but what is one myth in particular that you had to unlearn as a leader? And I'm wondering if maybe that was recent because it seems like you've you accidentally, I guess, fell into building 10-7 and have more recently really revamped and improved things because it makes sense. You're a futurist, you're trying to improve.
Yes. What's something that I've had to unlearn?
Yeah.
Um, well, I think letting go is still a process that I struggle with. Like, I know rationally that um, I am not going to do something as well as someone else who has more time and is focused. And so that rational part makes it very easy for me to give it to someone else, to delegate it, to ask for the help. But those thoughts still exist in my brain. Like they're so much smaller right now than they were when I first started 10-7. And so there's definitely been progress. And so I think the process of unlearning a myth or a behavior really takes a long time.
Sure.
Um, and you can do it. You just have to be present and you have to be aware of it. And so I mean, the fact that I don't do it anymore, that I do delegate almost everything, maybe you could say I unlearned it, but I still think about it. So maybe it's not completely unlearned. Maybe it's just maybe the fact that I'm aware of it is enough to keep me from doing that behavior. So to answer your question, I think letting go is the hardest thing, especially for someone who is like starting something and this thing becomes a complete investment of everything you have, your
Yeah.
your funds, your time, your energy. Every day you think about it all the time. Then you employ people, then they have mortgages and car payments, and then you employ more people, and then you're worried about that stuff, and like it becomes your baby in a way, and letting go of that is hard, and it's a daily effort that you need to do. um, but then you remember that you've surrounded yourself with people that are amazing and that you can absolutely trust and that trust each other, and you have to be okay with them making mistakes. That's maybe something else you have to learn or unlearn, is like people are going to make mistakes. That's what we do. We call them experiences once they've happened, We learn from them, but letting go is definitely probably the hardest thing. I think that's my answer.
I like it because it's something that I think about as well, even on a smaller scale. I create something because I am definitely not the math brained person. I am the creative person. So if I'm sitting here making a guide book for whatever we need to be talking about, uh, the creative process and the artistic nature of it is like birthing my own child every
Oh,
time because
sure.
it's
Yeah.
so intimately involved. It comes directly out of my brain, and then once it's out into the world and people have opinions and edits to make, I have to tell myself that it is for the good and it has nothing to do with me.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I completely understand what you're saying. It becomes not just us, but all of us collectively.
Yes.
Do you think that empathy has a lot to do with that? Especially as a leader.
I think that empathy is sadly really in short supply on the
Mm,
planet. I think that we could use more empathy everywhere, whether it's in your personal life or in your work life or in the teams that you're a part of, whether you're on a sports team or a work team. I think putting yourself in someone else's shoes and trying to imagine life for that person allows you to understand their position and their opinion a whole lot better than just throwing your opinion at them without that empathy. When you have empathy for each person on your team, hopefully they are experiencing that from you and maybe will have empathy for you as well. And I think that leading with empathy and thinking about your clients and your partners, but also your employees at the same time is very important because it allows us to facilitate humanity. It allows us to just be human and do the work that we need to do. Uh, People talk about work life balance all the time. People
mhm.
talk about leave your work life at home. No, leave your home life at home, don't bring it to work. Leave your work life at work, don't bring it home. And that bifurcates us. It's
Yeah.
like Severance. I don't know if you watch the show Severance, but like that's the epitome of leaving work and home at home.
Mhm.
And it's not reality. The reality is that we're human and we are coming to work with our baggage from home and with my daughter who's sick, my son who fell and like is having a hard time at school. Um, all of these things come with me. I can't ignore them. And when I'm at home, I have worries about work that I bring home with me. And to say that we have to separate those things, I personally think is completely unrealistic.
Sure.
We bring these things, whether we like it or not. We're a group of humans trying to do human stuff. Let's accept that and have empathy about it. And if someone needs to go off camera and check on their kid who's sick, they'll catch up later. Record the meeting. Have it transcribed. Look at it async. Like there's lots of ways to deal with this stuff. Have the empathy for them to do what they need to do. They're going to be back to do the thing later. Doesn't matter. Like, that's where the empathy for me comes from. It's the whole thing about being present as humans wherever you are and being okay with that.
So you touched on this a little bit as you were saying, record the meeting. And they can do it async. There's inherent flexibility in that ties to empathy and ties to work-life balance.
Yes.
But how do you then balance the practical demands of running a business? Because you can't just have everyone taking off at the same time because they have to manage their sick children or pay their mortgages or whatever.
Yeah. Um, the reality of it though is kind of like a system of particles, physics, like a real physical system.
Mm,
All of these things are not going to all happen at the same time. And if they do happen at the same time, it's probably only going to happen once. Maybe it'll happen twice in the span of 5 years. But the reality of it is that all of these events are random. And so they happen at different parts of the day, different parts of the week. And like I don't worry about that. I like if two people are off at the same time, two people are off at the same time. If my client can handle that, maybe they shouldn't be my client. Like if they're unreasonable about two people having sick children at the same time and we couldn't deliver, like that's a you problem, not a me problem. And as long as we've communicated this to our clients and we've been open about it and we've been mindful about it and we've tried to do things to mitigate this, I think it's fine. Like life happens. We can't predict it in some cases, but I
Yeah.
rely on the randomness.
Gosh, I'm so glad that you tied that back into your physics background. I was like, yes, here it comes, the full
Here it
circle
comes.
moment. It's perfect. It's perfect for storytelling, but then it's also perfect for just illustrating the reality of what so many of us are experiencing in work, in life. I mean, we're constantly talking about it. Where some of us, like myself, are shouting from the rooftops of LinkedIn posts about it. There are people writing articles about this. There are people giving keynote speeches and on stage and TEDx
Yeah.
talks about this. Like,
Mhm.
but you're living it. You're creating this environment for your colleagues at 10-7.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Why not? What's stopping us from doing it?
That's the greatest question because I ask why not all the time.
Yeah, like do it. You want to do something? Do it. That was one of the greatest freedoms and liberties that I was able to realize when I came to the United States. Like, there were always rules in South Africa. Don't do this, don't do that, carry this. Here, like, you imagine it, do it, work hard, make the change. Like, really, there's nothing stopping you from it.
Because we have talked about all of this from kind of a higher level, what I would like to do before we leave is uncover a story about 10-7's culture that you think best represents exactly what you were trying to build.
Hmm. Um, Yeah, so so this is more of a general story of more than one person and not specific, and maybe not a specific incident to a particular employee.
Sure.
Um, so let's see, we're recording this in 2025. 2023 was a really difficult year for 10-7 financially speaking. And it was probably the worst year we've ever had and probably hopefully will ever have. Um, we made a ton of really bad decisions, from scaling people and signing contracts and hiring people. And it was a confluence of other random events that happened to us. Not crying about it, bad experiences, bad mistakes. We learned from it. But what happened was that at the beginning of 2024, we had to do layoffs. And it was the first time I had to fire more than one person at the same time. And it wasn't because of bad performance. It wasn't because of anything they'd done wrong. It was literally we couldn't afford to have them on staff. And aside from the fact that it was really difficult doing that, and the fact that these folk really needed jobs and needed to find new jobs after we laid them off, what some people don't remember and don't think about is the effect that layoffs have on the team members that remain.
Mhm.
And so, and so, we had we had 3 people we had to lay off. A fourth person we had to reduce down to part time. And on a team of 15, that's more than a third of the company. And the people that stayed worked their asses off and believed in the company and believed in everything that I was trying to accomplish and believed in the changes that were made. and worked hard and didn't have as much work as we needed to in the first quarter, but we brought that back and they continued to work hard and we made other changes. And all of those people stayed. And we were able to motivate them and we were able to work as a team and we were able to show the fruits of our labor that 2024 ended up being a profitable year for TEN7. And we had a ton of debt that we paid off. But all of these folk ended up with us in the first quarter of this year. And we were able to change our compensation and our benefits so that we could reward them in some way as well. And like, that's the kind of company I've wanted to build. That's the kind of culture I've wanted to have, that even in really difficult times, people still believe in that North Star. People still believe in that work that they're doing, even if it's hard. Like if we're talking about what the problems are, and if we're talking about the plan to get out of it, and they're still working hard, that's the kind of company I want to run. That's the kind of place I want people to be attracted to work for. That's the kind of agency that I want partners and potential clients to see and to hire, to know that we'll have their back no matter how hard it is, and that we'll have our employees' backs too. Like that's that's the story. Like that's the kind of company I've wanted to build.
I think that is perfectly it just perfectly sums up the culture that you've built, having people
Mhm,
stay and having
mhm.
them believe so deeply in what you believe in so deeply. So I so appreciate your time and for you getting raw and real with me because I think that's scary sometimes for people. But if we're honest about what we're building and how we're building, then maybe other people can do it too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was a joy talking to you. Thank you for having me on and for asking me all these really personal and deep questions about work. Like you can see, I bring my personal life to the company all the time. So, we can't separate those. And I'm very appreciative of your time and grateful for you asking me.
Thanks for joining us on Getting Personal, brought to you by lifestyle benefits experts at Compt. Remember, you can always find more stories and helpful insights on our LinkedIn and blog.